Hey. This isn't Jason Freeman. This is Chris Taylor today. I'm going to be your host. I'm going to bring Mr. Freeman on in just a moment here. But this is episode 270 of the Awkwardly Awesome podcast. And today, Jason's going to talk about some new perspectives and I guess implementations possibly of the imperfect best concept, which he created. And I'm excited to hear what these newfound discoveries are and how he's implementing them into his life. We'll also play some clips from past podcast appearances from other guests where they answered the question, what does doing your imperfect best mean to you? Just to show how many different levels there are to this and how unique and personal it can be for each person's experience. But because I'm not a host regularly here, I'm just going to get right into it. So without further ado, I got to remember how to use this thing. Talk about imperfect best. Okay, here we go. Without further ado, we'll do this.
Today's guest, Jason Freeman.
Mr. Jason Freeman, welcome to your podcast, the Awkwardly Awesome podcast. How are you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course. So you had mentioned having basically an epiphany, if you will, a new understanding of what imperfect best meant to you here recently. I don't know if you want to dive into that, or should we kind of build the foundation of what imperfect best is to those that may be tuning in and are uninitiated with it?
It sounds good to do some foundation building.
All right, very good. So we'll start out here. This is kind of when you do presentations, sometimes you'll include this slide. It's a pretty solid definition, I think, for the basis of imperfect best. So it's even when we try our best, mistakes and imperfections will happen. When we do our imperfect best, we accept these mistakes as part of the process, learning from them and leveraging them where possible. Would you like to explain any more what that means beyond the obvious?
What it means is growing for me every day, and I'm acquiring new understandings. It's super ironic, Chris, that I should be teaching this concept of doing your imperfect best, because for much of my life, was a perfectionist, and what that means is not only did I want to get everything spelled correctly and be perfect as a son, be perfect as a friend, be perfect in whatever I did. It also means that I wanted to be myself perfect. I just was really uncomfortable with the imperfections I perceived in me, my voice, my coordination, and of course, perfection is impossible. I would say almost an illusion, because there's always another layer better. We can get something the most perfect, but there's always another layer better.
Right.
So with my own life, with my own body, I was chasing this illusion of perfection, which was impossible to obtain instead of feeling joy and feeling accomplishment and feeling successful, I was just putting more and more pressure, more and more stress on myself to do the impossible, which was just distracting me all the time and making me generally miserable.
Yeah. I think a lot of people can relate with that perfectionist part. It seems to be a plague, especially when you're younger or when you're just trying to start out something, like start out a business or start out, I mean, you gotta take it further back like you did, just being comfortable in your own skin. But especially before you start something, there's this idea, this need that you need to have all your ducks in a row. And you can basically sit there doing nothing but lining up ducks for years, you know, and not be ready and come up with a million and one excuses why you're not ready yet. You're not ready yet. Because, like you said, when you're chasing perfection, there's always something better that can be done. And then as you learn, then that becomes the next level of perfection. There comes so many different layers to it, and it can really create a stall, or in your case, like you said, just be miserable, where you're so many years in, you still haven't done this thing, or you still aren't the person that you expect yourself to be. And you're kind of haunted by the fact that that thing didn't happen. And I know, at least with me, that, sometimes those things can pass you by. Sometimes that pursuit of perfection creates a scenario where whatever it is you didn't jump on, that opportunity is no longer there. And did you ever experience anything like that in your pursuit of perfectionism?
Um, yeah, for years, I don't even know for sure. For years, I was just had so many ideas, and I was waiting in many cases to act until I had the perfect idea. And that's really a slippery slope because ideas, thoughts in the mind can always be more perfect. And if we're waiting for the perfect idea, we'll be waiting a whole life. And so I don't know that anything has passed me by. I'm 50 now, and hopefully I still have 50 or 55 more years to be on this earth. But so like I think we can. I definitely didn't act on many things I wanted to act on when I was younger, but I think, like we talked about a few weeks ago, when you were on the show, sometimes we can go back to things we used to love. You were talking about movies and toys and such, but I mean, why can't we go back to an idea we used to love, and in this time give ourselves a week to make it better, and then tell ourselves, like, after the week or after the month, we're going to start taking action on it.
Mhm.
And guess what? When we take action on an idea, it revises the idea.
Right.
And so, but I think we can go back to the things we felt too imperfect to do in the past, and still do them if they sound exciting to us.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good thing to keep in mind, is that just because we may have decided that we put something away, or that we're too old for it now, or we're beyond that or something, there's always value in going back and looking at something again, and maybe examining it for new ideas. And like you said, the core here is that perfectionism so often prevents action, or at least it prevents action towards progress. You might be creating a series of actions, but actions don't mean anything if you're never actually applying them to any sort of progress. So I guess that's where I'll cycle this back to what we were talking about when you were mentioning perfectionism and you were mentioning how miserable it was making you. At what point did you have the initial idea for imperfect best? Like, at what point in time did you realize the importance it was to start taking action, no matter how miserable you may have been or how afraid you were to put yourself out there, so to speak?
I great question. I took action. The story is probably 5 years before the term imperfect best was coined, but I had just completed my master's, the master of finance in poetry, which is funny because it always sounds like I'm saying a master's of finance, which would have been a far more lucrative degree.
Are you saying a
But
master's of poetry doesn't open every door for you in life?
I mean, Chris, it's quite a shock, but it definitely does not. Anyway, I had just completed that degree and was back in my hometown working the same position I had had for a decade, which was a good job, and I was really good at it in many respects, but it just wasn't fulfilling me, and I was pacing around my apartment. I was still so worried and so nervous because that was my thing. Now that was how I knew to live. I kind of thrived on being anxious, even though it was miserable. And suddenly I remember that a few months before my aunt and uncle Annabelle Cook has said, "Hey, Jason, we think you should try yoga." And at the time, Chris, when someone gives you a great idea and you have no intention of doing it.
Yeah, there's, like, no, it doesn't resonate at all. You're just like, "Okay, yeah, great idea," thinking it's coming from a very subjective place, to that person, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I even kind of knew it was a good idea, but still, I was too afraid to do it and to
Mhm.
I'm like, I have a disability. Yoga's a physical activity where you have to be bendy and stretchy and be able to concentrate really well. And I'm like, I'm just like, I don't do yoga. But
Mhm.
on that day, a few months later, I'm like, nothing else is working. I'm miserable. I've tried everything. So I put my coat on and walked in the freezing cold. This was January, down to the Sioux Falls YMCA. I got that first day. I got a Y membership. I didn't even do yoga that day. But that small action, that small step towards breaking the perfection like the sound barrier, implying only the perfection barrier. That small step in breaking the perfection barrier changed the course of my life, and that's the reason we're talking right now.
Right.
Because I would have gone in some other direction if I couldn't have gotten a handle on my tendency to worry and be anxious and be a perfectionist.
Okay, so it would be fair to say that yoga kind of gave you more inner peace and self-reflection, and maybe not.
Inner peace, self-reflection, on one level, it did free my tightly woven patterns of thinking and gave me a far more expansive bandwidth to be creative. But on one level, but on another level, yoga is about breathing and moving the body. So on another level, my body was tight and my breathing so shallow, probably stemming all the way back to my birth injury, and so we
Mm,
expect in yoga, where is it? Just a sec. In yoga allow me, my body have been like this, and yoga allow me to start breathing deeper and stretching my body more. Excuse
and
me, I got this yesterday. I was walking around Walmart because it's horribly cold in South Dakota, and I was just there to walk, not buy anything, but I saw a Slinky and just
you're like,
had to have it.
this is going to make the perfect visual for the podcast.
Yeah, I didn't even think that at the time. I just thought, "Oh, wow, a Slinky."
Yeah, Slinkies are fun. I
Yeah,
actually
okay.
have one on my desk too, oddly enough.
Oh, no, do you have it now?
Yeah, hang on, I'll show you.
Oh my gosh,
We're Slinky twins here.
Slinky twins. We also incidentally were both born in the Kansas City, Missouri area.
Yes, we were. There's my new Kansas City poster up there.
The Kansas City Chiefs?
Yeah, that's when they won the first Super Bowl, and it's a picture that depicts their celebration parade. So there's all sorts of goofy stuff going on in the photo, but yeah, we felt it fit here in the pool room, so had some fun
Nice,
with
nice.
it. but but yeah, I digress because that's a very good point, and I hadn't thought of this Slinky as a visual in regards to being just like tight knit, wound up, kind
Mm,
of feeling like you're stuck. You know, I used to always, when I felt very stuck, I used to always feel like I was in a cage that was 10
mm,
sizes too small,
oh,
where you're forcing yourself to fit into something that's just not comfortable. You can't ever stretch out. You can't ever do all that you can do or be all that you can be.
yeah.
And the key is trying to break free of that, trying to expand that in some way. And that ultimately leads to action. Like there's no way through that without some form of action. And sometimes it's massive action. And oftentimes, it starts with very small steps. Like you said yourself, you went to the YMCA and you signed up for a membership that first day. Like you didn't dive right into yoga, but you're like, I know if I at least do this, I've got this membership. And this membership's now going to sit here and knock on my door and be like, "Hey, remember me? You know, I'm just a drive away or a walk away or whatever it is." And that step opened the door for the next step, and then the next step after that for you. And so, from where you were with yoga, then relaxing you and allowing you to kind of expand and be more of who you are instead of this constricted version of yourself.
Mm.
Obviously, within that space, is that when you started to discover more of what you wanted to do with your life? Or did you always kind of know, and then that was just kind of part of what was making you miserable was knowing what you wanted and just not ever feeling like you had the ability to do it.
The short answer and the long answer is no. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I mean, maybe deep. I think deep in my heart, as all of us do, I wanted to have an impact on the people around me and the world. But before yoga, I was in a habit of coming up with ideas. Have you ever done this? Come up with idea, get all excited about them, and then start going for them. And with most new things aren't going to turn out really well in the first few weeks or the first few months or sometimes even in the first few years. But but the thing after but I wasn't ready to be patient like that.
Mhm.
Back then, thing after thing would eventually get what I thought was too tough.
Right.
And I would quit doing that thing. So my vision and my dreams were all
Mhm.
here, but then I would quit one thing, quit another thing, quit another until I was wrapped in entirely on myself and just saying, "Oh, I want to do all this stuff, but I can, and if only I didn't have a speech impediment, if only I didn't have a
Mm.
disability, my life would be good." I mean, what should other be? Yes, I mean, sure, I could do certain things better if I didn't have a challenge called a disability, but having a disability didn't equal having a small life. It was saying no repeatedly to myself that equaled having a small life.
Yeah. No, I mean, you bring up a very important topic in here too, and that's that excuses, I think, play a very big role, and sometimes our excuses can be very real and very physical, and they can be something that's almost impossible to get over. Like you said, in your case, you have a physical, for lack of a better word, disability. You have a speech impediment, you have coordination differences. So these are things that it's very easy to look, and even when you were looking at yoga, like, I can't do that because I have this disability, or I can't do that because of that. But that becomes part of the trap as well,
Mm.
as you know. And sometimes within that trap can be opportunity as well, because you once you see beyond it as a trap, right? Like, so I know from talking to you, at some point in time, and I don't know if this came first before Imperfect Best or if this came because of Imperfect Best, but at some point you started reevaluating your speech impediment and your coordination differences, and you started looking at them as, what have I been able to do? What have I been able to experience? What have I been able to achieve because of these things, you know, or in spite of these things? What areas of strength has this given me versus always blaming it for what it's taken from me?
This is you're getting at the heart of my epiphany about imperfect best, which is a very simple epiphany, as a lot of epiphanies are, but wasn't ready to embrace it before now, I guess. But so in seventh grade, I had the worst year of my life, culminating with attempting suicide. Luckily, I called for help, and we always hope that if the people around us are in that place, they'll call for help. But I had the worst time of my life, and then I started to come out of it and yeah, started having successes. I learned to drive. My dad taught me. I didn't think I could drive. I graduated high school, success. Graduated college, success. Got my first job, success. Grad degree, success. But the successes really, I knew they intellectually they were good, and they filled me with a little joy. But back then I was trying to, I was like, I had the things that made me miserable, and like my disability, like my anxiety and stuff. Maybe if I can run fast enough and get enough successes, I can outrun that stuff.
Mm.
But Chris, I don't know if you've ever tried to outrun a lifelong speech impediment.
Yeah, I have not. I can't say that I have.
Well, I have, and I can tell you it's very much impossible
Mhm.
because no matter, I mean, some things in life we can change. Like I have a whole new relationship with with anxiety than I did 15 years ago. That's a huge transformative change. But other things in life, like my speech impediment, no matter how fast I run, even if somehow I learn to run 60 miles an hour, when I stopped and when I spoke, I would still have that same speech impediment.
Mhm.
Some things about us, no matter how how much we do to get beyond the things, they're just going to be with us. So am I being pessimistic now? Yes, we could take it that way, but but it doesn't have. From one perspective, it's very pessimistic, but from another perspective, maybe doing our imperfect best is about getting what we see as our gifts on one hand and what we see on our limitations on the other hand, getting them to bringing them together and going forward with all of it. I mean, people sometimes are like, "Hey, Jason, wow, you've overcome your speech impediment," and I don't know, Chris. Does it sound right now like I've overcome my speech impediment? No, but I've learned to use it powerfully.
Mhm.
This morning I was using my voice to lead laughter yoga with a group, and I've done and I use my voice to talk to my girlfriend, and I use my voice to talk to you. So I'm using the thing I perceived as my limitation to move with my gifts, to move with the obstacles life presents, to move with the opportunities life presents,
Mhm.
to move as one whole being towards doing my imperfect best. Does that
Right.
make sense?
Well, yeah, of course, and going back to the question of have you overcome your speech impediment, of course, you haven't overcome the physical aspect of it, the physical limitation of it, but I would definitely say you have overcome the mental limitation of it, you know?
that's a crucial distinction.
You know, I feel like the kind of the cornerstone of doing your imperfect best in your case, and don't let me put words in your mouth, but I like to use this analogy sometimes of, you know, you learned to dance with the things you couldn't change. So it's
Mm,
like if these things are finite, if they're stuck, if they're never gonna be different, you have 2 options at that point. You either accept them and move along with them, learn to work with them, or you deny it and you kind of stay stuck and stay miserable. So in essence, if you learn to dance with it, you learn to have fun with it, you know, you learn to get it moving, and then maybe it teaches you something in turn, you know. Maybe you learn something about it that you didn't know before because you never had fun with it. You never interacted with it. You never allowed yourself to, you know, do your imperfect best and, you know, work with it for things.
so 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 the story, and we don't know where the world will lead when we start taking steps to work with limitations. We don't know where the world will lead. So this story happened probably after I have been speaking 6 or 7 years. I had just spoken at a conference, at the Habitat Warrior conference in Houston, and I was driving back to the airport to fly out with a bunch of people, and Bob Donnell, bless his soul, he's passed away now, but but he was brilliant. But anyway, he was in the car with me, and he's like, Jason, Jason, I'm so frustrated. I listened to you speaking, and you have the audience hanging on every word. They pay so close of attention to you so they don't miss a thing. Maybe you should start a program where you teach people how to have speech impediments. And I mean, of course, it was a joke, but 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 it just shows when we start to take steps and more steps and more new perspectives from different people become available to us and enliven us.
Mhm.
Did I know that one day this guy I didn't know yet when when I went to the YMCA that day and bought the membership, did I know about this guy sometime in the future who I was sharing the stage with? Did I know he would have this perspective? No, I had no idea,
Right.
but it happened.
Yeah. And a very good point. I know we've talked about it before too, and that's something that I always felt from the very first time that I saw you. When you spoke, there was a quiet that came over the room. It was almost like a different level of respect where people were hearing what you were saying, and then as you're relaying points, like you have such an art of weaving in, you know, humor and everything else into your thing, but you're just so authentic. And pretty much from when you start talking, people hear that. They can sense that about you. So you kind of command the room. People lean in, they listen, and I feel like they listen more intently because of the speech impediment. You know, sometimes I wonder if you didn't have the speech impediment, would you have that same, you know, hold over the room? But the thing is people instantly kind of open their hearts to you because, you know, in part because of the speech impediment, in part because they understand like whatever I've gone through, this guy has gone through something on a different level than what I've experienced in most cases. And in that process, let me cycle this back to see where I was going. But so instantly they've now opened their heart to you. And now when you talk about things and you move beyond the things that they perceive, so they can perceive the speech impediment, they can perceive that stuff, but now you're talking to common things that you have in common, a lot of common obstacles that we all share, and it just hits on a different level, and it makes people really evaluate, like, what they're like, "Wow, I'm dealing with that same thing. If this guy can do it and this guy, it's like he's so much stronger than me." And then you realize in there, but if he can do it, I have the ability to do it too. And it just there's something more powerful coming from you than coming from somebody who you can just like brush off. Well, yeah, but he's a public speaker, he's a professional speaker, he does this for a living. That's easy for him to say, but in your case, it's not easy for you to say. But it just I don't know, it hits deep, and I know we've talked about it, like I said before, but I was instantly hooked that very first time I saw you speak all those years ago, you know, on stage, and it really did. It shook me to the core because I was dealing with a lot of stuff that I felt was somehow unique to me, and come to find out, it's there's so many just universal things we're all going through, and so much of it starts with the limitations we put on ourselves and breaking that free. And breaking those limitations leads us into exactly what we've been talking about, which is the imperfect best concept. So
it gives me goosebumps. Thanks for saying that, and I mean, I like to think it wasn't close. I like to think that somehow I would have gotten to bought the Y membership and taken the first yoga class and step after step. But I think actually I was probably pretty close to. I know I was very close to not doing it because I had ignored my aunt and uncle's wisdom for months and just if I hadn't have done that in 2010, we wouldn't be having this conversation now. Like we just don't need when we take that first step, we just don't need all the answers, or we
right.
don't need to know where we'll go. We just all we need to go to say, "Hey, I'm not sure, but I think this is a step in the direction I want to go."
Mm,
And we can take it and, hey, if that step doesn't work out, maybe, maybe I had gone to yoga and it just wasn't my thing. Maybe I went to 5 classes and it wasn't my thing.
mhm,
I would have quote unquote wasted 5 hours and the $35 membership. But then I could have done something else. Like we can experiment with our steps. Some will work and some won't. But if
yeah,
if we don't take any, none of them are going to work.
right. And it's also possible too that maybe those, that brings up two points. Number one was if you went to yoga and you figured out it wasn't for you, there's always that question of at what point do you truly know it's not for you? Like,
Mhm.
can you just take the one step and figure out off that one step every time, like, oh, this isn't for me, and then walk it back? Or should you get a certain amount of steps in and see, maybe it is truly for you and you got to go a little bit deeper? That's probably part of the idea of doing it. But if you definitely get your answer like this is wrong, the wrong way to look at that is then say, oh, this has been a waste of my time. Who's to say those 5 steps didn't open up some other opportunity,
Mhm.
you know,
That's a
that
good
you were
point,
unaware
that's
of?
a good point. Well, really good point. Who's to say those 5 steps didn't open up something else? And I also like your point that you might not know the first class or the third class. Maybe you challenge yourself to say, I'm going to go to 15 classes. And if after that time this isn't for me, I'll honor that. But if it is, if I love it by that time, I'll honor that too.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think that's too, like, for me, we always, talk about it and reexamine it, and at its core, imperfect best, is about basically it's not giving your imperfect. It's called giving your imperfect best for a
Mhm.
reason. Like, you are giving your best. You're not half-assing something. You're really making a goal for it and reminding yourself that. And also, if you find yourself not living up to your potential or not giving something all that you can, now there are, of course, some days where maybe your best is going to be less than 100%, but you give everything you got to it and you go for it and you do your best, and you just understand that, hiccups are going to happen, mistakes are going to happen, things like this are going to happen along the way. And you accept that and you still do your best despite that. And I think where I was going with that is like, okay, so let's say we're doing those 5 steps. Let me take it into something for me is like working out, is such an important part of life as you get older that, you know, can come and give you so many areas of it just makes everything else a little better. It makes other things easier. But in the beginning, when I was younger, I used to put it off all the time, especially like lifting weights and stuff like that. It was kind of like, well, it takes an hour to do. I've got all these different things that need to be done. But sometimes that hour is one that you can't afford to take off. That 1 hour that you put in this area gives you so much more energy for other areas, and it's not always fun, it's not always enjoyable. Sometimes it sucks, but the one thing that never sucks is how you feel once you've done it, once you've
Mm.
accomplished it.
Mhm.
So then that becomes the imperfect best, right? That comes the thing you hold on to. It's like, "Hey, I might have to sit through the suck, I really don't wanna do this today, but that's exactly why I have to do it. And I'm gonna stay in here, and I'm just gonna keep going, and I'm gonna keep giving it my best." And then you get to the backside of it, and you never regret doing something good for yourself. It's never a waste of an hour. And I feel like that's the same thing when we're talking about going to those 15 yoga classes or doing whatever it is a certain amount of time. If it doesn't work out, it's easy for you to say, "Oh, well, that was a waste of time," but it really wasn't. It all built towards something better, you know?
And and y if something I do if I do something and I make mistakes, if I have hiccups, I used to get all frustrated by that, try to ignore the mistakes or rationalize them away or something. But now I say, if you make a mistake, that 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 happened. I don't look forward to making mistakes, but if it happens, I'm going to use it as a teaching tool. What can I learn from this? I'm
Mhm.
going to use it as a creative tool. this mistake happened. Okay, what can I create now?
Right.
I don't I don't hope I screw anything up to borrow a line from an old friend. I don't hope I screw things up, but if I screw things up, I use that screw up to move forward, or I try the best I can to.
Right. You learn what you can from it, and then you don't get hung up on the rest of it.
Yeah, yeah, and learn what I can, and then ask myself, what can I create with this thing that happened?
Mhm.
And yeah,
Very good.
but I'm kind of curious, what do these other folks say
Yeah, I
about?
was gonna say, I was like, this sounds like a good time to kinda transition because there's it is a very personal thing, and I think sometimes it depends what someone's going through in their life at that time. So, one thing you've done at the end of, every one of these Awkwardly Awesome podcasts, which, by the way, if I can interject and add this podcast exists because of a hiccup, right?
Mm,
This podcast exists because of a little something called COVID, and
mm,
you were on a roll, you were killing it, you had speaking engagement after speaking engagement, things were just
mm.
really starting to go, you know, so well for you in that regard, and then all of a sudden the world shuts down, and it's like, "Well, what do we do?" Well, we have to keep going, and I know I had thrown this idea of a podcast out there, kinda willy-nilly in the past, but it wasn't something that was really resonating, you know, with you at the time, or you couldn't really see through, and
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't resonating with me at all at the time.
mhm. So that would have been like going to those 15 yoga classes and deciding, "Yeah, this yoga just really isn't for me," kinda in a way. It was just that it
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
hitting, but then all of a sudden, when there was nothing else, it's like, "Well, how do we do this? How do we get through?" So I just I feel like that's such a neat thing because now we're 270 episodes into this thing. We've been doing one a week, for however many years now, or you've been doing it, and
But I mean, I'm the voice of it, but you do a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and I mean, I credit you, like you said, with the idea of the with you basically saying, Jason, you have nothing else to do. You're capable of doing a podcast, and then you found StreamYard, which is an amazing podcasting platform, so easy to use, and you really helped me take all the steps, but you got me going on the first step for sure.
mhm. And then you've turned out, I can tell you from this end right now, hosting is not the easiest thing in the world,
Yeah, you're doing an amazing job. I like even down to the hey 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 at the beginning. You nailed that. That was awesome.
Yeah, I was going, I was following the master. But but anyways, yeah, I just wanted to bring that up as we're sitting here talking, is that, talk about doing your imperfect best. The whole platform we're speaking on right now, it all started because of an obstacle.
That's a great point.
But but yes, now I'm curious. I want to listen to the way that some other guests have answered this question in the past. So how about I play one, and if we want to talk about it, we can, or we can roll in. I've got four pulled, and I think they're all really good. Um,
Cool, cool.
so let's start with this first one here.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about the concept of imperfect best, and what it means to me as I envision the best I want for my life and to contribute to the people around me. And I go for that, but mistakes, obstacles, any which thing often come up, and instead of using that as a reason to stop, I try to learn from that and be inspired by that and move forward. What does doing your imperfect best mean to each of you?
So to me, my imperfect best means that whatever and wherever I am today is where I am today. Some
Mm,
days I can give 100%. Some days
mm,
I can give 50%. And as long as I'm doing my best that day, imperfect best gives me the ability to offer grace to myself for not finding perfection and the reminder not to let perfection get in the way of something good.
mm,
Sometimes good is good, even if it's not quite perfect.
mm. Amber is a medical ethicist at a major hospital, and talk about imperfect a lot. I mean, you can imagine the range of healthcare things she's dealing with, the range of things patients and family are dealing with. Talk about an imperfect situation. Yeah, you heard what she brings to that each day is phenomenal.
I agree. I agree. Shall we go to a next one here?
Yeah. Well, roll the clip,
Roll the
creator.
clip.
That part of your talk when you shared with our learners. I mean, the imperfect best, really. I mean, that's kind of the underlying theme, maybe to a lot of what we've been talking about here, which is pretty interesting, actually. But it's, to me, it's finding. It maybe goes back to the hero's journey again, right? It's finding that call. It's finding that unique talent or gift that you have, pursuing that in an effort to serve others, to serve your community, to serve the world, and knowing that doing important work, doing valuable work will come with many mistakes and learning along the way, right? So it will be imperfect. But to me, that's the only way is for it to be imperfect, and much trial and error working towards what is the greater good in serving others.
No, that one, is real interesting because it's talking more about, you know, being more than yourself, being bigger than yourself to be of service to others.
Yeah, and has a really strong vision of that, and I was thinking this is coming from a highly successful businessman. He has a company that manages a lot of hotels in the Midwest, and plus he runs a school too, and it's just interesting. I used to think that professional people like Anne somehow did everything perfectly,
Mhm.
but they but but they dare to do things where they know they will be imperfect, and they learn from the mistakes and move forward.
Yeah, they're still going to have the same obstacles day in and day out as the rest of us, no matter how well-oiled the machine appears to be.
Mhm.
Alright, we'll go. I got 2 more here. Let's do this one.
For me, that would be to trying to not be afraid to make mistakes, allow that to happen because that's part of the creative process. And a lot of times, a lot of stuff is just in your head that's holding you back,
Mhm.
whether that anxiety, vulnerability, insecurities, and just keep trying. Just keep trying your best. I think for me,
Mhm.
that
That
did I
that's
answer your question?
powerful. That's powerful.
And then I
Ooh.
wanna jump into Cade's. This is a longer answer, but I think it's a very important one.
I've taken lots of damage over the course of my life, and I wouldn't be me without my damage, right?
Mm.
My imperfect self is myself. My imperfect best is showing up every day. Like, I'm one of those teachers who's like never gone, right? Like, I'm sick like death and I'm here still. So you talk about doing my imperfect best. That's like another example. Another good example of this is what I do with kids doesn't always work, right? You'll have cohorts of kids that just don't buy, and they won't. And it's there's usually an archetype involved, and I'm going to spare the details, but there's usually an archetype involved, and they'll hate it for the sake of hating it, right? They hate it because they hate anything, right? That's and so bringing that imperfection of like, this is my biggest passion, and this is something that will really greatly help your life if you just let it. But there are people, who don't let anything help their life, right?
Mm.
And so I still have to approach everything with the same passion, even though I know that 25% of them hate this, and they're definitely going to let me know. Maybe not with outward behavior, but all the energy tells me they basically want me to die because they don't want to do this. But for the other 75% of kids, I can't let that affect me. And so it is imperfect. All of it's imperfect. Our life is imperfect. Like, I don't even like choosing which pants I'm going to wear in the morning. Talk about imperfect self, right? Like, I just, I don't know. Like, I like Einstein. At one point, I had a different color flannel for every day of the week. So I just like, you're doing my imperfect best is like literally every day of my life. I don't really know how else to cross it. Like, nothing is going to be perfect ever is going to ever anything be perfect. But if you don't try your best, you're never going to be excellent, right? So if excellence is doing what you can with what you have, then that is being your best imperfect self, right? And trying to do what you can with your life. Otherwise your whole life is going to be wasted, right? Like if you I just give up, like we've met people who have given up. They're not inspiring at all. They're not cool. You don't want to be them, right? Nobody wants to be them. And, therefore, no matter what like life has handed you, I would be a great model of failure had I given up. I would have been like, yep, don't do what that guy did. You know, I didn't. I got up over and over and over again and dusted myself off and saw a future. And largely when I kind of just let go of the steering wheel for a while, that's when things got best, honestly, where when the wind started blowing the boat in its own direction, I just kind of kept doing my thing and kept looking at data and kept helping kids, and life got better and better and better and better and better as each one of those moments passed. And so I took my imperfect life and used it for good instead of evil. And that is my ability of being my imperfect best, is taking all my damage, all the dents in my armor and the chips in my shield and the rust on my sword, and using it to help kids, to help them avoid some of the damage that I took, because there's certainly some needless damage in there, and using that wisdom to help the next generation of children and inspire them maybe to do the same for the next generation, right? And so on and so on. Yeah, imperfect best. That's right here, right now, all the time.
Love that one.
I first saw Wells the last guy give a TEDx talk in 2000, and knew I wanted to have him on the program. He's had amazing breakthroughs teaching the Dungeons and Dragons not game. What do you call it? A game?
Well, I mean, yeah,
not-
I myself have never played it, but from what I understand, it is a role-playing game, but it's something so much greater than that. It's assuming these characters and building these characters up and creating a story. It's a whole process of creation. So yeah, calling it a game seems limiting. Oh, look, we got a guest. But
Kitty.
yeah, talk about imperfect best right there. But yeah, Dungeons and Dragons is I would say most people that play it would probably argue it's more of a way of life or a lifestyle, that you can apply outside of a game.
Well said. Anyway, this man has had amazing successes teaching his students and having them play Dungeons and Dragons. Whatever we call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just,
And and
he's just amazing.
and he uses that to give them tools essentially that they can apply to other areas of their life from what I remember.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff. Okay, well, on that note, we just listened to four people tell us what doing your imperfect best means to you. I don't feel like it would be fitting to end this episode of the Awkward Awesome podcast without asking you, Jason, what does doing your imperfect best mean to you today?
Gosh, Chris, you were doing so good at hosting and until this tough question. I'm just teasing you. Yeah, you're an amazing and gifted host. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you, brother. I appreciate that.
What does doing my imperfect best mean to me today? It means realizing how much of life I don't know the answer to. I I don't know the answer to so much of what's going on in the news. I don't know how it's going to turn out. I used to always ma- like imagine possible futures, but now I'm trying to say say hey, I just don't know. It could go any of a variety of directions. I do not know. And then in my own life, I don't know what my career is going to go into exactly. I don't know what my relationship is, what my relationships and my friendships are going to go into exactly. But I know I'm going to give each day my best and strive to make it better than the day before. And that to me as of March 1st, 2026 is what doing my imperfect best means. Ask me tomorrow and I would say something else.
I love that. I love that. It's accepting the uncertainty that comes with every day and still giving all that you can
Hmm.
the day without letting that stall you or make you question what the point is.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a great answer. Sorry.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me on Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. I appreciate it.
Of course, brother. Of course. Is there anything else that you'd like to add that we didn't cover or
Anything else? Just I encourage all of you listening whenever you listen to just experiment with these concepts in your own life. Like studying imperfect best always gives me more questions than that exact answers. So I hope this episode has given you some good questions to live into and some new ways to challenge yourself to be your imperfect best, whatever that means to you.
all right, beautifully said. All right. Well, on that note, hang out for a minute and we'll see the rest of you next week.
Thank you, everyone.